Can you believe that it is Friday again? I literally blink my eyes and then it feels like the week is basically over. And I was just wondering, how has your week gone? What have you learned? What has gone well? What has not gone so well? And what could you have done to really improve the week in your personal capacity as well as in your business capacity? And did you reach those goals that you set out for yourself at the beginning of the week? Did you even have goals? I think sometimes we forget that we need to set not just big globular 1 to 3 year goals, but we need to figure out how to take that big goal and break it down into smaller goals. And we've done a session on this previously about your month in review and planning for the year ahead. So if you do not have weekly goals, please go check out that video. It is definitely worth a listen. But these questions that I've just mentioned, those are the questions that I ask myself probably at least 3 times a week. On a Monday, I'm like, cool, so how is the week looking? On a Wednesday, I'm like, okay, so how am I tracking in terms of the goals that I set out? And on a Friday, I'll be like, okay, cool, so how did this whole week go? And really importantly, what worked well, what didn't work well, and what do I want to improve for next week? And I know that I need to do this because not only do I need to manage my employees, I also need to manage myself. And if I cannot manage myself well, I'm never going to be in a position where I can manage anyone else well. So let's be honest for a moment here. It's really hard to manage people, whether it's yourself or someone else. It's always going to be hard work. As much as you might be a people person, it's still really hard managing people. And especially with lockdown and people working from home, it's just gotten so much harder, right? It's harder because we can't see the people. Hi, Carla. We can't see them and we don't actually know if they are doing the work they're supposed to be doing. So it comes with its pros and cons working from home, as you might know. I was just researching a few funny stories and I'll pop some links in the chat as well, but I thought I would just mention 3. So the first one, I don't know if you've seen, but if you have used Microsoft Teams, you'll see that there is a way to apply a filter to your video. Now, there was this one boss. They were in a group Teams meeting, I guess, with 4 people, and she managed to turn herself into a potato. And I saw the picture. It's quite funny. And the problem was she couldn't figure out how to change herself back to a normal person. So she stayed a potato for the entire video. So I thought that was quite funny. Then there was another one where a guy that was doing the weather forecast on Fox News, and we think Fox News, they're like all super fancy, but the guy's dog came into the recording, and not only did he come onto the video, he also completely switched off the imagery that they were using. You know those maps that they use to track the temperature and like the wind and stuff like that? That disappeared. So he had to basically talk through the weather forecast with his dog sitting with his paws on his lap. So I thought that was quite funny. And then the last one, you might have heard of this one, it was doing the rounds a little while ago. There was a couple working from home and the wife always had conference calls. And she was sitting, I think she was sitting at the kitchen table, the dining room table, and her husband would come down the passage dressed up in some superhero outfit or like a monster mask and all sorts of funny things. And he would like Zoom bomb the meeting while his wife is busy trying to have a serious conversation. And it was quite funny reading through that article, and the wife was complaining about it, but apparently her colleagues really loved getting this fashionable entrance coming in, and the husband had all sorts of different people sending him costumes to use during these recordings. So those are some funny moments that happen, but really it's not all fun and games, right? It can sometimes be really hard. And working from home comes with a lot of distractions. And as I said earlier, because you can't see your employees, you don't know if they are actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. And that has a big component and a big reason why we sometimes feel like that is because maybe there's not the right level of trust is not in place. So I have a few thoughts that I want to leave with you just in terms of managing your remote workers. Because I think it's important to keep these concepts in mind and figuring out how you can apply it in your business And through having constant communication with your staff members, determine what the best way is for you guys to work together well as a team. So the first thing that I want to suggest is to be flexible. And I think during lockdown we have really learned how to be more flexible and how to manage people's schedules and just be sympathetic as to what is going on, especially with kids being at home and now with schools being closed down for the next 4 weeks. That just adds an extra dimension, right? So understand that working from home may be here to stay, and you need to make sure that you are taking that into account when you're dealing with your employees. And not just putting in short-term strategies in place, but longer term, and figuring out how over the next year, potentially, working from home is going to work within your business. And an important component to that is understanding that we should be focusing on output, not so much on input. Where previously we might have just been, you might have heard of the term presenteeism, which is where we are just sitting at our desks every day, 8 till 5, and you think your employee is working. But they're not necessarily being productive during all of that time, right? And especially when we're working from home, you can't expect your employee to necessarily be sitting in front of their desk from 8 until 5. So I want to encourage you to think about measuring output rather than input. Stop looking at that timesheet and just measure whether or not they are actually performing and completing those tasks which you have set out for them. Okay, so that is something important to think about. Hey B. Okay, so that is one. But at the same time, we're able to change the way we structure our days, and it could be just saying you commit to being online for a certain period of time, and everyone will be online during that certain period of time during the day. And you know that at least for that 2 or 3 hours, everyone is online, and then the rest of the day doesn't matter because you had that specific time that you can collaborate. So that is something I want to just mention. And also bear in mind that sometimes we can become more productive when working from home because we don't have everyone else knocking on our doors, and we don't have those constant interruptions. So if you think about that, they might actually end up working less hours than what they would have at the office. But at the same time, because you are not leaving home and going to the office and coming back, you might be in a situation where your employees are suffering from overworking. Because it's easy just to stumble down the stairs and go sit in front of your laptop. Here's looking at one of our audience members here. And just working, and supper comes and you're still working, and you maybe eat supper in front of your laptop, and then it's time for bed. And that is not a healthy place to be in. So I want to encourage you to put some structures in place, not just for yourself, but also help your employees to put similar structures in place. And a good way to do that is by putting routines in place. And I'll talk a little bit more about that just now. So I wanted to mention that, and then make sure you're communicating constantly and you're communicating well with your staff members. That might mean that you need a synchronous and an asynchronous tool, and those are big words, but really what it means is you need something where they can have instant communication with you, for example like a WhatsApp, versus asynchronous, which is basically they respond when they are able. And the type of communication channels that you use are obviously dependent on how urgent the information is or how urgently you need a response. So think about those different tools that you could potentially put in place. And we've got a remote working guide that you can go download that gives you a whole range of different options in terms of synchronous and asynchronous tools, with a little bit of a comparison between them. So go check that out and see which tools will work best for you. And then the last thing I want to mention is make sure that you are communicating priorities with your employees well. Remember, they might set their own priorities, but if you are not communicating clearly with them about what you think is important, then you're always going to have this expectation gap. So help them to keep track of what is important by checking in with them on a regular basis. Okay, so I mentioned routines, right? So I have really found during lockdown that putting good routines in place is extremely helpful. It helps me to start up my day well and end my day well, and it helps me to transition between home life and work and home life again. So next week I would like to talk a little bit more about that, and to just talk about how we can use our time more productively within our business by putting good routines in place. So do tune in for that, and hopefully it will help keep you sane at the same time. So until next week, same time, same place, have a lovely weekend. Bye bye.